Hey everybody, how's it going? Let's talk about your home recording studio. I've got a good one today, something that's in a box that's a little too big to get right here in view. So I'm gonna open it real quick, show you what we got. So yes, this is the Warm Audio Bus Comp. This is their 2-channel bus compressor. It's like patterned after the classic SSL, I believe it's the G-Series, the SSL compressor out of the G-Series console. And I'd started to get really interested in getting something like that until I priced the SSL versions. Yikes, they're about $3,500 or so. And I didn't want one quite that bad. So I've heard so much about Warm Audio over the years, and I've actually never owned a piece of their gear. So this will be a first for me. So let's open up this box here and see what we're dealing with. All right, good deal. So it is well packed, and there's not as much spare room in the box as I kind of thought there was initially. So we have our IEEE, whatever you call that, universal detachable power connector. It looks like everything else is packed away in some plastics. Let's get it out of here. All right, let's take a look at what we get in the box. Aside from the unit and the power adapter, we get a sticker. If you're into that kind of thing, we get a instruction manual. Good deal. Looks like it's in English, French, Spanish, German. All right, I like that. It's actually pretty detailed. I'll have to give them props for that. We have a little QA approved button. Oh, and like a fancy full color catalog here. That's kind of cool. All right, on to the unit itself. Let's drop our camera angle here. Well, let's go left to right here. I'll start over on this end. So prominently displayed, we have an analog VU meter. I really like that. And from what I understand, yeah, so it says dB of compression. So that is awesome that it's showing us gain reduction instead of input level, output level, or something like that. And moving over, we have our threshold control. So this just controls when we are going to start compressing based on how loud the signal is. I have to say, first things first, the knobs feel great. That knob feels terrific. Metal, and the potentiometer behind it is great. That's a pleasure to interact with. Good deal. And then we have our attack. And this is how quickly we are going to compress the signal once we cross our threshold. And this one is stepped. Oh, I like the feel of that too. Nice, firm click. And it looks like our choices here, and these are in milliseconds. We have 0.1, 0.3, 0.6, and then 3, 10, and 30, it looks like. So that's a pretty good wide sweep. And then we have our ratio. This is how aggressively we are going to compress once we exceed our threshold. And our ratio, that's again, just a nice firm click for our selections here. And we have 1.5 to 1, 2, 3, 4, and 10 to 1 ratios. Love it. And here we have our release, and it looks like this is in seconds. And our selections are 0.1, 0.3, 0.6, 1.2, and an automatic. I love the auto release, that's cool. Looking forward to playing around with that. We have a high pass filter. And this is, I looked it up, and this is in fact side-chained. This is in the detector path, not the audio path. So this is a side-chained high-pass filter, just built right in, which I love. So you can avoid having the low frequencies just driving the compression all the time. You can turn it off and just compress it full band. Or our cutoffs are 30, 60, 105, 125, and what is that? 185 hertz. I love it. Another great feeling knob. And then we have our makeup gain, Since compression is turning down volume very briefly, it can make a signal sound quieter. You know, compression's all about turning down the loud parts. And so we can compensate for any adjustments we make to make up some gain at the end of the process. And now we have a few buttons that I'm curious about here. So here we have a compression button or compressor button, so this must be our bypass. We have an external side chain, so I'll flip it around back and we'll look at what inputs we might have to pass in our own side chain in addition to the built-in high-pass filter. And then engage transformers. That's pretty cool. So there are a couple of transformers inside here that we can switch in or out for just a little bit different character, a little different color. And then we've got our power switch. Nothing too fancy there. All right, let's take a look at the rear here. And on the rear, we have our power. Here, it looks like we have selectable mains voltage. So this is set for 115. I'm in the US, so that's appropriate for me. We have something here labeled GRD. Is that ground? Is that like a ground screw? Maybe that's where things inside ground to. But it also says fuse, 1 amp fuse. So I'm not sure. That may be a fuse cover. I'll look that up and see what that is. Now over here, we have, yes, a side chain input. And I don't see like any side chain return or anything. So we have an XLR side chain input. So we could feed like the output from an EQ and kind of tailor our own sidechain EQ curve if we want. Or we could feed in some signal that we want to duck other things out of the way, like feed a kick drum in and have the compressor compress when the kick drum hits and compress some other signal, you know, maybe the bass guitar. And then for our inputs and outputs, so we have right output, right input, left output, left input, and they are all, we have our choice of XLR or TRS. And I have to say, just overall, like the weight of the unit, it's heavy. Like I can tell there's some transformers and some other metal, you know, heavy kind of components in there. But also the chassis is all metal, the faceplate is metal, the knobs are metal. But I have to say, just from holding it in my hand, you know, turning the knobs for the first time, pushing the buttons, I have to say that builds a lot of confidence. This thing feels really well built just right out of the box, first impression. Now, normally this is where I would start plugging it in and running some signal through it. I'm going to do that off camera, and I'll continue this video tomorrow when I've had a chance to play with it and get to know it a little bit, read through the manual a couple of times to make sure that I don't have anything wrong or not forgetting anything. So I'm really looking forward to plugging this in, playing around with it. So I guess I'll catch back up with you. Well, to you, it'll be a few seconds, but to me, it'll be tomorrow. All right, see you in just a little bit. Okay, here it is a few days later, and I'm glad that I took some extra time here to kind of get to know this compressor a little bit. And what I did in the intervening time is I ended up recording a project from scratch, just kind of with the aim of having some elements in this mix that would be a good fit for bus compression, for stereo bus compression. And in the process, ended up trying this on a few different things. And here, as I sit down now, I'll try it on a couple other things that I haven't tried it on yet. So I figured I'd take you all along for the ride. So I say first, let's listen to this on a stereo drum bus. For our attack, for drums, oh, I don't know. Let's go to the 0.3 millisecond setting here. And for our ratio, honestly, I love a 4:1. For our release, I tell you what, since this is drums, let's take the release as fast as it'll go. So that's 0.1 seconds, so 100 milliseconds. And for our high pass filter, I tell you what, let's start off with that off. And our makeup gain, as I found on this compressor, while most of my other compressors have the kind of 0 in the middle of the sweep of the gain knob, this has 0 all the way at the bottom, so you can't attenuate, you can't go below 0. So this is just going to be no makeup gain, and we have all the way up to 20 dB of makeup gain, which that should be plenty. And let's just turn the threshold all the way up so it's not doing anything, and I'll start dialing the threshold down so we can hear the compressor working. And then we'll see a little bit of gain reduction happen here. And one thing to note here, I am gonna probably dial in some more extreme compression settings than I would normally use. Compression is just difficult to illustrate from my studio to yours as you're sitting in your home watching. All of the things that happen to the dynamics of audio between me doing it here in the room and you hearing it on your end, it goes through a lot. So I'll try to just kind of smash it more than I probably normally would, just in the hopes that you'll be able to hear what's happening. So let's kind of crush this a little bit more than I normally would here. I can hear that get a little quieter. So yeah, I mean, that definitely has some attitude to it. Now, I've never used like a real SSL compressor, so I couldn't possibly tell you how closely this sticks to the original that it's trying to emulate here. But I can tell you, like, that's definitely got some attitude to it. I really like just kind of the flavor that it adds here. Let's turn on that transformer and see with these, somewhat over-the-top settings here, this over-the-top amount of compression, and see if that transformer adds or detracts at all. Let's give that a listen. I don't know. I don't know about you. I couldn't really hear much. A little bit, let me turn my headphones up a little bit louder. There does seem to be a little bit different character in how it distorts in the low end, but I'm not sure. Let's listen again. Yeah, I mean, it's subtle. That's one of those buttons that somebody could turn it off while I wasn't looking and I probably wouldn't notice. Now, let's play around with the high-pass sidechain filter here, and let's listen to how the kick drum, so right now there's no filter at all. So all of the low frequencies are passing right through the to the detector. So let's listen to how it changes, how the kick drum driving the compression changes as we start to click this filter higher and higher. Like the thump of the kick drum doesn't quite smash down clamp down the compressor quite as much. I love both of those sounds. I think those are amazing. Even with, we're getting up into 12 and maybe more than that dB of gain reduction, which is a lot, but I do love how that sounds. All right, let's move on from the drums. Now, one thing that I haven't done yet is to just use this just right on a bass guitar. Now, this is a bus compressor, which kind of implies that stereo signals are going to be passed through it. It takes a left and a right and compresses them both. So let's see what happens if we take a mono signal, like a bass guitar, and just send it to one side, like the left side, and then just take that back as a mono signal. So here we go with a bass guitar. This was recorded direct in, and then into this Ampeg, what is it, SVT VR. And then just did a little bit of EQ on it just to get rid of an annoying frequency, but other than that, it's pretty raw. Pretty much everything in this project is pretty raw. There's just a little bit of EQ and some panning, and a couple of things have some reverb on them, and that's it. So let's do the same thing, and for a bass guitar, I'm probably gonna slow the attack down a little bit. Let's try 3 milliseconds. Ratio, yeah, I'll leave it 4:1 for right now. And for the release, I tell you what, let's try the automatic setting for release, and let's turn off the high pass filter. Let's get back to unity gain here. So I'm just gonna turn the threshold way up, and we'll be hearing it without compression, and you'll see the meter moving as I start dialing it in. Let's see what we end up with here. Yeah, sorry about all the finger noise. I'm not a good bassist, but hey. Let's try a faster attack. Okay, now let's start bringing in this high pass filter, and let's see how that sounds. So for that high pass filter, the highest setting here is 185 hertz. So that's definitely above where a lot of the energy is in this bass sound. So you could see the needle was barely moving, even with the same threshold as we started dialing that up. All right, honestly, I like it on bass too. I would totally use that, that sound. I really like that. Well, let's keep moving along here. Let me get rid of it on the bass. Last thing we really need is more than one thing sending to the same compressor. So we'll unsolo the bass, and what I have here is a pair of acoustic guitars. This is the same acoustic guitar part played twice, 2 separate performances. They are hard panned left and right. And for acoustic guitar, so let's turn the threshold all the way back up here. I probably want a little bit slower of an attack. So these ones that are below a second, let me start at the 3 millisecond. And if I need it faster, I'll dial it down. I think 4:1 is going to be just a little aggressive. I think it's going to sound kind of pumpy on an acoustic guitar. So let me try I'll try 3:1, and I might dial it down to 2:1. For our release, I know I don't want like a super fast release for acoustic guitars. So I tell you what, I'm just going to try the auto setting, just like I did on bass. To start off, I'm going to leave the high pass filter out, but I have a feeling, you know, this is a dreadnought guitar, and they tend to be pretty boomy. There's a lot of low end energy coming out of the top of that guitar and hitting that microphone. So not letting that drive the compression, and instead letting the rest of the sound of the acoustic guitar drive the compression, probably gonna be a good thing for us. So we'll start to dial that in, and I'm gonna leave my makeup gain alone here. All right, I'll hit play, and we'll start dialing in the threshold. Let's try a faster attack. Definitely starts pumping there. let's get rid of a little threshold. Not bad, really. So let's hear that kind of percussive part again. That seemed to be the one that was hitting it the hardest here. And I'll start dialing in the high pass filter, and we'll see if that helps it sound a little less conspicuously compressed. Ooh, I like it. Wow, okay, I like that a lot. I really like having that high pass filter available for acoustic guitars. That completely changed the way the compression sounded. And what else do we have here? I have some electric guitars, which honestly, normally I don't really compress that often, since distorted electric guitar is already just kind of by nature compressed, at least to some degree. But here, I tell you what, just for the heck of it, let's go ahead and set it up and let's see what it sounds like. All right, if I were to take a guess for electric guitar, I probably don't want a super fast attack, so I don't think I want to go below about the 0.6. For a ratio, yeah, let's try it at that 3:1. I'll leave it on the auto release, and I don't think I want the high pass filter in this. And now I've got the compressor strapped across there, so let's just start playing. I'll dial down the threshold and see what we end up with. Okay, honestly, that sounded better than I thought it was. Like I said, I don't typically put compressors on electric guitars, but that actually did a pretty good job. You know, since these are playing kind of intermittent rhythms, it kind of did a good job of just kind of squishing them down a little bit, but without just making it sound super compressed. All right, I don't think I'm going to spend any longer on the electric guitar. That was just kind of more of a curiosity than anything. So we'll get rid of it off of there. And what do we have next? Oh, we have some background vocals. For an attack, I don't really think I want to hear like plosives and the very first instant of sound on any of these, so I'm gonna try the fastest attack. And for a ratio, I tell you what, let's try this 10:1. I'm gonna really smush them. And for the release, since I'm not exactly sure what the auto considers a long release, I'm gonna put it on the slowest release, so 1.2 seconds. I'm gonna leave this high pass filter out. Let's get rid of our thing here, and I'll hit play, start dialing down the threshold. Hey, na, 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 hey, na, na, hey, na, 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 hey, na, na. All right, so, you know, 10:1 might be a little much, but my next step down is 4:1, and I don't think that's gonna be enough for what I want. That's not bad. Yeah, I couldn't really tell much of a difference between the auto and the slowest release there. Awesome, good deal. Man, I tell you what, I have really been enjoying this thing. So as one final test, and it is a bus compressor, and probably the most popular use of a bus compressor is on the master bus. So I have all the compression on everything else disabled here in this mix, So let's just listen through. And in a master bus kind of situation, so let's get our threshold up. I probably, for an attack, would probably go middle of the road, this 0.6 setting. For a ratio, I tell you what, let's start at 4:1. For kind of a rock mix like this, I think that's appropriate. If it's too conspicuous, we'll back it down to 3 and 2. I will leave it on the auto release. I will leave the high pass filter out for right now. But let's get an idea of what this thing sounds like across the master bus. And oh no, as I was editing this video and listening back and looking back, I realized since I can't see very well from where I'm sitting, I accidentally, for the master bus test, left this clicked over to the slowest release, which is about the worst sounding possibility, if you ask me. I meant to click it over to the auto release. So I'm gonna redo this part. Here we go. All right, now let's start dialing in a little filter. That's really pumpy. Okay, I mean, honestly, on just about all of those settings, and again, I'm pushing it harder than I would on a master bus for illustration purposes, but on really almost all those settings, I thought it sounded pretty darn interesting at very least. But one kind of, I'm not sure if this is like a defect or a flaw, or if it's just the way it's supposed to happen. So the ratio that's how aggressively, how much you're compressing the signal once the signal exceeds the threshold. And so typically at higher ratios, it's gonna sound quieter just because you're compressing those peaks even more. And as you dial into lower ratios, it's gonna sound a little bit louder because those peaks are being allowed to get higher, louder. But for some reason on this, it's like it's backwards on this one. As I dial the ratio all the way up, it's louder. Like almost like there's some sort of makeup gain happening. And then as I click the ratio down, it gets quieter, that's the opposite of what I would expect from a compressor. And again, I've never used a real SSL, so I don't know, maybe they behave the same way, and this is just emulating that. Or maybe it's just some kooky thing about my specific compressor. Maybe, you buy the next serial number off the assembly line and it doesn't do that. I don't know. But that was really kind of the only kind of goofy thing about using this thing. Honestly, I love it. I love it way more than I thought I was going to. And you know how it is, you get that kind of confirmation bias thing going, you spend your money and you get the thing and you try it and, oh, look, it sounds different when I do this and it sounds different when I do that. It's easy to kind of, fall in love with your own gear. But I have to say, I'm more head over heels about this than I thought I was going to be. Well, I hope that if you're in the market for looking at this compressor, the Warm Audio Bus Comp, that this video has been at least a little bit helpful in informing your decision whether or not this compressor is right for you. Stay tuned. Coming, I don't know, soon for me. It might be days, might be weeks, might be months. I will do a shootout between the Warm Audio Bus Comp, the ART Trans Y, the FMR RNC, and RNLA, and a pair of Empirical Labs distressors. I was playing around with them all yesterday, and I was very interested and surprised at the results I was getting. Well, thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. That's gonna do it for me here this time, and I'll talk to you all again next time.